Ayy, look, yeah, ayy. I'm in the lab like Dexter, brand new batch he tested. I'm with all the extras, don't try and bitch, I'm pressure. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the New Media Podcast. I'm your host, Ja. As always, we hope you enjoyed the last episode because, of course, today's going to be an even better episode. As you can see, we got the whole crew with me today. Everybody's in the house today. And today, man, you know, it's now we've entered the off-season stage of the NBA season. And so there's a lot that's gone on these last couple of days and this last week, to be exact. And, of course, we're here to get right into all of that. We'll talk about Ja Morant's suspension. Finally, Adam Silver post-NBA Finals announced how long Ja Morant will be suspended for going into next season. Bradley Beal was on the move this past week. He got traded to the Phoenix Suns, a new super team once again. No surprise there. We'll talk about that trade. CP3, although, was in that trade. So, of course, we'll talk about his next destination because, of course, as we all know, he's not going to be in Washington for much longer. And then, of course, with the NBA draft being tomorrow, we're going to be talking about it, a little bit of a big board, every player in the lottery and everybody outside of that as well. But, of course, before we jump into everything, man, temperature check, how's everybody doing?
Man, I haven't been on here since we lost the finals, but we're finally getting into the off season. Bradley Beal hit us with the craziest pump fake. I mean, like this was a shocker, but when you find out the reasons that he went there, it's no longer surprising to me. But still, though, you feel a little sour from that. And tomorrow is draft night, and I just feel like if Damian Lillard doesn't leave, I'm just gonna be heated because now who else is left for us? We're not gonna touch Zach LaVine, and I'm not spending 4 first-round picks for OG Anunoby. So that's how I'm feeling.
Hey, good luck with that Dame thing, man. You know Dame, he loyal to the spoil. He's not leaving. He's not leaving, man. But I'm excited for this offseason, man. Especially, start off with the draft tomorrow. Excited to see what happens in the early picks. Especially, to see the trades if anything happens between that first and to the 9th pick. See who moves up. See what pieces get traded here and there. And the dominance of the offseason, man. Free agency is gonna be next. We're gonna see some players moving. Trades are already happening. So I'm pretty excited for this offseason. So can't wait, man.
Man, I'm excited for this NBA draft, man. After spending a whole day today watching film on all the lottery picks, I'm excited to see where all these picks end up going. But to speak a little bit about Bradley Beal, we'll get into it a little bit later. But my concerns lie on Damian Lillard a little bit. I think the Portland Trailblazers came out today and said that they were declining all calls for Damian Lillard, and so I just started laughing when I read that because it's like, Dame did all that for the last couple of months, last couple of weeks, and now the Trailblazers are declining calls. So it looks like they're going to keep their top lottery pick, the number 3 pick, I believe, and we'll see how that goes for them tomorrow night. But I say we go ahead and jump right into it, man. We'll go ahead and start off with the Ja Morant news. So, of course, as I said earlier, Adam Silver, he wanted to hold off on suspending Ja Morant until after the NBA Finals because he didn't want to take away from that series between the Denver Nuggets and the Miami Heat. But once that series was over, a couple of days removed from that, Adam Silver came down with the hammer and gave Ja Morant a 25-game suspension for next year. So pretty much my question to you guys was 25 games enough?
Yeah, I think 25 games is enough just because when you look at the NBA, Ja Morant isn't going to make an All-NBA next season. He's not going to make an All-Star game. And 25 games in the West is a blow. It's a huge blow. And, if your starting guard, your All-NBA guard is out for 25 games in the Western Conference, that's going to hurt you severely. I don't think he's going to get paid for those 25 games. I mean, it's just a terrible situation for himself, but he landed himself in that situation. And, the first suspension was about 8 games. And the next one, they pushed it all the way up to 25 games. So that's about 30% of the season. And I think that's pretty appropriate for what he did. I don't care if it was a toy gun, if it wasn't. It's just we are one of the up and coming faces of the league. And when you go out and you perform and you act like that in front of a camera, going on IG Live, flexing guns and stuff, it brings a bad brand to the NBA. So, Adam Silver, I think he got it right with 25 games. I don't know why people are calling for more because 25 games is already a lot. I don't know if you want him to get suspended for 60 games or something like that, but he is a star in this league. He is a guy who every time he plays, there's always a potential for a viral clip. So Adam Silver does know that. So I think 25 games is appropriate.
I 100% agree, man. 25 games, I feel like that's 30% of the season right there. He's not going to be playing. He's not allowed in the team facility. He's not allowed at practices. He can't be anywhere near the facility or anything like that. So he's basically away from the team. And I'd be brought up the point, 25 games is a big hit in the West, especially when you're battling and teams are battling from that 12th spot to that, fourth, third spot. They, very close seating. And your star player, one of the best players in the West, he's missing out. He's missing 25 games. It's going to be tough. So I feel like, second time he got in trouble, I feel like he does, 25 games is perfect. I feel like Adam Silver hit it on point. I hope, he learns a lesson from this coming back and he doesn't make the same mistake a third time where it's going to be 50 games or maybe 60 games or he might be out for the season. So for him, 25 games, he's going to lose a whole lot of money. He's already been losing a whole lot of money with his advertisements and everything, his deals and all that. He's missing out on a bunch of stuff. And then, you slap on another 25, his brand's going to just take another damage. So for him, I feel like Adam Silver hit it on point. He's setting a standard to him to say, hey, 25 games is right here. Next time you do something worse, it's going to be way more and it's going to affect your career much more. So I feel like it's good for them. But I got to learn from these two mistakes and come back and not get in trouble anymore. He's putting his team into the tough waters. He's putting his teammates' trust into tough waters. He's missing games over stupid mistakes that he's doing outside on the court. So it's like, why pay the guy every time he's coming back and a mistake, he's suspended, and he comes back, mistake again, and suspended. So hopefully he learns and comes back and doesn't do it again.
First things first, I want to go ahead and say rest in peace to David Stern, man, because I know he wouldn't allow this to happen in his league. Adam Silver, I believe he took it lightly on Ja Morant for this suspension. 25 games for a second offense. If it was a first offense, maybe I'd understand. I'd probably say it's a little too much, but 25 for a second offense, I think that's too little for a guy that has history with this behavior off the court. I feel like, what's going to happen if he does this again? Is it going to be the whole season? Is it going to be more than 25 games? Is it going to be half the season? We just don't know what it's going to look like because he set the number to be 25. And I understand 25 games is a lot in the Western Conference. It's a lot in the Eastern Conference. It's a lot, period, right? But at the same time, you got to understand that this is Ja Morant. This is who he is. This is his behavior. This is something that this is a lifestyle he's going to portray for the rest of his career, for the rest of his life. He's not looking to change his ways. And, for him to come out and say that he was playing, it was a toy gun, that's just some joke. That's a PR stunt. A lot of, his team and his inner circle probably just told him to say that. And they probably went out and bought that prop, because I guess on May 14th, he recorded himself lighting a candle with it. But I just think it's all jokes, man. 25 games for a guy that's, displayed this behavior not once but twice, and it's pretty much like a slap on the wrist. I understand that there's a lot at stake in terms of making an all NBA team, making an all-star team, being a high seed in the Western Conference, but he put himself in this position. There's nobody else to blame but himself. So I'm just a little bit confused as to what Adam Silver is trying to do and what statement he's trying to make with Ja Morant, but because when he talked about it a little bit at the lottery, he seemed a little bit disappointed. And so I was like, okay, he's going to lay the hammer on this guy. It's not going to be something light. It's not going to be 25. It's probably going to be half the season. But, for him to give him 25, it's kind of like, Ja Morant, we understand you're a top talent in this league, and I can't give you any more than 25. So 25 is the max, and you're just going to have to accept it. And so, for the Memphis Grizzlies, I feel like, it's going to be tough for them. As we'll talk about, them in our next episode with the deal they just made to go acquire another point guard to kind of aid in Ja Morant's absence. But I just don't think these guys are going to be, good enough to, maintain a top team in the Western Conference. These guys were a 2 seed in the Western Conference this past season. I just can't see them touching anywhere near that. They might be battling for a playing spot, while he's out, and potentially even like a 5-6 spot at best. And so, this is something that he has to learn from. Obviously, we've talked about this multiple times now. This is not something that, we're new to. This is Ja Morant. This is who he is. But at the end of the day, when you go out there and you're a professional basketball player, you got to be a professional on and off the court. And so, he does his job well on one end, but on the other end, he can't hold up his end of the stick. And so, the Memphis Grizzlies organization, I'm sure they're extremely disappointed. I know his teammates are for sure disappointed because, at the end of the day, Ja Morant's their leader. That's their franchise guy. That's their best player. And they only go as far as he goes. And so for him to miss this many games, it hurts them a lot. And, they're not going to be competing for much. And now who do they go to, for those first 25 games? when he's out. And who knows how tough that schedule might be for the first 25 games. What happens if you play all the top teams in the Western Conference, or maybe like once or twice a few teams in the Eastern Conference? And it's like, at some point, I'm pretty sure when Ja Morant comes back, these guys are going to be below 500 and they'll probably be battling for a playing spot. But, it is what it is, man. Adam Silver, I think if Ja Morant does this one more time, he's going to look like the biggest fool in the world because, if you took it lightly on him for a second offense and then for a third offense, I'm pretty sure his hand's going to be forced at that point to, go out and, pretty much place a hefty suspension on him, for however many games it is. But at this point, man, it is what it is. But, I kind of laughed at this when I got this notification. I think this news dropped on like last Sunday, like first thing in the morning. And, 25 games. I was like, man, it's just not enough. It's not enough, man. But it is what it is.
I mean,
And
25 games is still like 30% of the season. That's a chunk of like, regardless, he's already going to feel it by not making All NBA and the All-Star team, and his team's going to suffer out of his absence. So I feel like 25 games makes more than enough sense. Plus, you got to understand this guy, regardless of how you feel about him, he generates money for this league. He's a highlight reel every time he plays. So, for Adam Silver, he had to find a balance between, making sure Ja Morant actually feels it. So with the All NBA, not making All NBA, and the All-Star last season, he didn't make All NBA. He could have really made it if he had not had that same issue, come up again. But this season, he's not going to make any of those two teams. So, for him, I think Ja Morant is actually going to feel it this time. And Adam Silver had to find a balance between, making this guy actually like essentially punish him for what he was doing, while also understanding like, we can't have this guy out for like more than like 40, 50 games.
it was a 10 games. It was like a 10-game suspension when he sat out in like March for that first offense. So you're telling me only 15 more games is enough on top of that?
I think that's pretty fair. I think the first one was 8 games. He was out. This one 25. I think that's like a hefty enough jump where like Adam Silver's just like, we have to make this guy actually feel his absence. So, I think this one is a fair punishment for him.
I guess we're just gonna have to agree to disagree on this one. I'm not a huge fan of the suspension, but I'm excited. I'm interested to see how the Memphis Grizzlies kind of survive or try to keep their head above waters without him. But with that being said, we'll move on from the Ja Morant news. We'll move on to much bigger news that happened a few days after that. The Phoenix Suns and the Washington Wizards made a trade this past week, and Bradley Beal, the Washington Wizards superstar, was on the move in this one. And so the Suns received Bradley Beal, Jordan Goodwin, and Isaiah Todd, and the Wizards received Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, multiple second-round picks, and multiple pick swaps. So first, we'll go ahead and grade this trade, and then second, how tough of a contender are the Phoenix Suns now in comparison to last year?
I had to sit on this trade for a little bit. One, because, kind of like I mentioned, it burned because, we were after Bradley Beal. It was really down between us, the Suns, and the Milwaukee Bucks. So I was sitting there thinking, we probably have the best shot for Bradley Beal, considering that we have the best asset that we can give up in Tyler Hero and, maybe match salaries with Kyle Lowry and, throw in a pick there. And then long and behold, the Phoenix Suns come in and they swoop Bradley Beal. They kind of emerged as like a contender for him in the later stages. And it just felt like it was just out of the blue. And then next thing you find out that Bradley Beal's agent, his son is a Sun CEO. So he already has connections there in Phoenix. And then his wife is from California. It was mentioned in the report that, he wanted to move her closer to home. And so if I had to grade this trade, ultimately they did get rid of Chris Paul and Landry Shamet for Bradley Beal, which is to me, in any scenario, in any case, I don't care who's around Bradley Beal. That's an upgrade. I know there's a lot of talk about the depth of the Phoenix Suns, but when you give up Landry Shamet and CP3, that's not depth. Those are just two bad basketball players that should not be on that team. So they got Bradley Beal, and if I had to grade this trade, I want to say it's a B plus, honestly, and basically an A, honestly, because you got rid of two bad players, a player who's on a contract that's aging, that cannot produce at the same level he was before. An inconsistent sharpshooter in Landry Shamet for an all NBA level talent, a guy who's a 30 points per game scorer a couple of years ago. He did it 2 years in a row. So I think honestly, when I evaluate this trade, they're gonna get a guy that at some point he's going to be on the floor no matter what. One of these guys, you know, so you're going to have a combination of KD and Booker, or Booker and Beal, or Beal and KD. One of these guys is always going to be on the floor at some point. So I think that's not a bad thing at all. My question is just, how do they fill the roster around these guys? You know, these guys are eating up a chunk, and it seems like if they don't end up winning a championship this year, what do they look like under the new CBA? Because three guys basically making 150 million is crazy. I don't know how you're going to be able to build a roster around that. You still have 8 in there, and he has a max contract. You have 4 guys under massive contracts. So I don't know how you're able to fill that roster around. Maybe try to get veteran minimums, but you know, who's going to sign for that little amount of money? So that's how I see this roster. But I do think this combination of 3 guys that are all great off-ball scorers can potentially be dangerous. And, you know, maybe in their minds, they're thinking, we're not going to guard Denver. We're not going to be able to stop them. Let's just outscore them. And so, you know, you're going to have 3 guys that are capable 30-point scorers every single night. I do think this is an A trade.
Man, the Wizards, man. Garage sale. Everything's going off for free. You guys want this? You want that? You want this? Just give me a cookie bag, empty half Gatorade bottle, and we'll make a deal. These guys are selling everything. So, you know, Bradley Beal going to the Suns, I mean, they got rid of CP3. CP3 was just a cone on that team. He wasn't contributing nothing. He was injured. He's always injured in the playoffs. He's always hurt. And then come down the line, he's 38. His contract's this upcoming season, 44 mil. It's like, I don't see them losing that trade. You know, they're getting Bradley Beal, one of the elite shooting guards, in return to their team. Obviously, with the depth issues they had last year in the playoffs, it's still going to be the same depth issues. But you replace CP3 and Landry Shamet with essentially a top 5 shooting guard, a guy that can go create get his own bucket, can score, can at will. So now they got 3 guys that can score at will. And like I said, going against Denver, man, it's not, hey, we can't, you know, play defense against him. It's like, who's going to score more? They got to put more on the offensive board. They got to score more. That's what they're aiming for. You know, I don't know what they're going to do with Ayton. I mean, I feel like, you know, try to gauge some trade offers for him, see what they can, you know, fill out on the market. Hopefully they can pick up pieces for him, you know, smother out the team, get some, you know, nice guys on the vet minimums. But to me, I feel like they won this trade, especially, you know, getting rid of CPO and his contract. I feel like nobody else on the league was going to want him. They were going to cut him for free. It was going to be, hey, just release CPO by himself. And you know what? They picked up Bradley Beal. Obviously, down the line, the contract issues, how much money those guys are going to be making on top of the cap space, it's going to be issues later on. So for them, it's a win now mentality. And for the Wizards, man, I don't know what they're doing. Bill, he's gone. Kuzma's gone. Kristaps gone. They got no first round picks in return, and a whole lot of salary dump contracts. And they got to find a deal for CP3, and shambles. Wizards, I give them an F. Suns, they get a B plus from me. They still got some depth issues, but the Wizards, I don't know what they're doing. 6-7 years from now, the team's still going to be trash. They're going to have no pieces. It's going to be tough. So yeah, F for the Wizards and a B plus for the Suns.
Man, I mean, to be honest, this trade didn't necessarily surprise me a little too much. But my only issue with this whole Bradley Beal deal was I honestly thought Miami had him as a lock. I thought Miami was the perfect destination for Bradley Beal to go to because, well, the Miami Heat just made the NBA Finals, and it was pretty evident that they needed a second star alongside Jimmy Butler. And I thought Bradley Beal could have been that guy, that perfect fit with Jimmy Butler, because Jimmy Butler, of course, playoff performer, we all know who he is. But then Bradley Beal is a guy who can bring some, you know, attention on the perimeter alongside him. And then, of course, you have Bam there. And so when he didn't end up going to Miami, I was just like, damn, Miami missed out on a good one. But you know, for the Phoenix Suns, man, I think this is, of course, it's an excellent trade. You can't really be mad at this trade. Of course, everyone's going to say the Phoenix Suns still have the same problems they did last year. You know, they don't have any depth. But this is not the same team from last year, man. This is a completely different team. When you look at last year's team, they had CP3, who's aging. You can't really rely on him in the playoffs. And pretty much DeAndre Ayton was the third option. He didn't do nothing for the Phoenix Suns. And so now they add a guy who is very talented on the offensive end. And I think he can generate a lot of offense for this team alongside, you know, 2 guys who generate a lot of offense for themselves, Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. We saw what they did, you know, in this last postseason run for themselves. You know, they were able to put up high points per game. And, you know, although they did run out of gas towards the end of that series against Denver, I think now when you add Bradley Beal into the mix, I'm not too sure if depth is a big concern. I don't think depth's a major concern when you add a guy like Bradley Beal, because now, like you said, you can mix and match with these three guys. At least two of these guys can stay on the floor at the same time. You can rest two guys. You can keep one on the floor. And even if depth is the issue for this team, at the end of the day, you have to outscore these guys. And once Bradley Beal gets going, he's getting his 30. You got Devin Booker, who can get his own 40. Kevin Durant, who's still arguably the best scorer in our league, can get his points as well. And so it's kind of like, this team is tough to guard. And I think it would be best for them to move on from DeAndre Ayton, because at the end of the day, it's like, if you keep DeAndre Ayton on this roster, what are your expectations for him? Because defensively, he's not really there, and that's always been his issue coming out of college. And offensively, he doesn't necessarily have that drive. He doesn't have that motor. If he doesn't get his touches, it's kind of evident out there on the floor. You can see him, in his body language, where he's kind of upset and he's frustrated. So I'm not too sure how DeAndre Ayton fits on this team, because at the end of the day, you have Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant, three very ball dominant guys, but at the end of the day, they can facilitate and create offense for everybody else. But DeAndre Ayton's a guy who's going to want his touches. He got his money. I'm not too sure if he was worth all that money, but at the end of the day, the Phoenix Suns did decide to pay him. But if they move on from DeAndre Ayton and get some quality role players that can just fit with these guys, maybe you trade him to the New York Knicks and get maybe Mitchell Robinson and some other piece in the deal. Maybe you send him to Boston and you get Robert Williams back and some other piece into the deal. And then you have some team cooking over there. And so, for the Phoenix Suns, man, their whole idea is kind of obvious. At the end of the day, they want to have a huge advantage over the rest of the league. And, every team in the league, for majority of teams in the league, they have like one or two superstars. And now they have, three guys. And so they're just pretty much saying, well, we're just going to try to, outscore you guys. Defensively, we're going to be, the same team we were last year. We're going to struggle on that end of the ball, but offensively, it's going to be tough, for teams to try to outscore us and keep up with us. Because, I'm pretty sure Frank Vogel is going to implement a strong defensive, mindset for these guys. He's a defensive minded coach. So I don't think they'll be terrible on that end. I think they'll be at least decent. But on the offensive end, it's all gas, no brakes. These guys are going to be pushing the pace. Devin Booker's going to be pushing it. He can facilitate as well. And then Bradley Beal a little bit can facilitate as well. And so, I'm excited to see what this team looks like, from game 1 all the way to game 82, and then from going into the playoffs as well. Of course, injuries are a part of the game. Injuries will be one thing that hurts this team. If one of these guys go down, it's going to be tough for this Phoenix Suns team to recover, because pretty much if one guy goes down, they're going back to that same exact team from last year, whether it's, Bradley Beal and KD healthy, Devin Booker out, and, you can mix and match there, whoever gets injured. But, at the end of the day, injuries are a part of this sport, and you can't necessarily control all of that. But, man, it's a great trade for the Phoenix Suns. For the Washington Wizards, I'm not too sure, if these guys are like the biggest losers of the trade, because at the end of the day, you got rid of a big contract that was on your roster. Bradley Beal taking up a huge chunk of money. Very smart guy, by the way.
But it's tough to say that because you're the one that gave him that contract, so it's just like you handed him that contract just for him to request out and go to his spot, and you basically get no assets. I mean, it's like, and the thing is, all the fact that he got to choose where he went. Makes me think like you'd even get someone like Tyler Hero back, who's a young shooting guard back in return. And because of Bradley Beal choosing to go to Phoenix, it's like you got no assets. Like, yeah, you got rid of that contract, but it's like you got nothing back for it. It's like you handed him that contract, he made his money, he played some games, and he got to leave. Didn't really provide much benefit to the organization.
And he put y'all in a predicament as well. He put a no trade clause on that deal like that. He can pick where he wants to go, and he put them in a position where, hey, I want to go to Phoenix, and that's what they got back. They got a 40-year-old CP3 back.
No, I hear you guys. That no trade clause was pretty much the deciding factor into like determining whether that was a good or bad deal. And Woj said it last week when there was Bradley Beal rumors circling all over the internet that if Bradley Beal were to get moved, the Washington Wizards wouldn't necessarily get a hole for him, because that contract is massive, and not a lot of teams want to take on that contract. But the only two teams that were willing to do that, one being the Phoenix Suns and two being the Miami Heat. And so, for the Washington Wizards, although they didn't get, a nice haul for Bradley Beal, their best asset, at the end of the day, they got rid of that contract, and I understand that, well, they gave him that contract. Well, they had to do right by him. At the end of the day, it's not like they're gonna let him walk into free agency like last offseason and just let him go and test the market. Like, they're not gonna do all that. They want to make sure they want to lock their superstar down for the foreseeable future, and whatever happens after that happens. So it's like, it is a bad contract, but they're just doing right by their superstar. The one thing that they messed up on was a no trade clause. The no trade clause, that's not common in a lot of contracts. Only a few players have ever had that. And so Bradley Beal negotiating that into his contract was a huge plus for him, because then he gets to choose wherever he wants to go. If he didn't have that, they could have probably sent him to any team in the league, any bottom tier team, and they would have got some quality assets. But with that no trade clause, he had the option to choose where he wants to go next. And he's being smart about it. He wants to be in the best position to win a championship, and he's also trying to do right by his family at the same time. And so, but at the end of the day, though, once they move off from that contract, they have an idea where they want to go now. They want to go into a full rebuild, and this rebuild process is going to take a very long time, because in the recent draft history, when we look at the Washington Wizards draft history, it's not the greatest. Johnny Davis, the guy they drafted, I believe, last year, not good at all. Then you go back to Corey Kispert and then the Denny Avdija draft, and it's like, the Washington Wizards need to be better at drafting quality guys, and maybe that starts tomorrow night. At the end of the day, we'll just have to find out. But this is going to be a long rebuild process for this team, and they're going to be one of those teams that are just one of the worst teams in the league, and they just better pray and hope that they end up getting that number 1 overall pick, or at least a top 3, top 5 pick at the end of the day. And so, they could have gotten more, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like, well, Bradley Beal put him in a tough situation, and if Bradley Beal said he wanted to go to Miami, they probably would have gotten a lot better offer than they did, from the Phoenix Suns. But it was his choice and his decision, and he's gonna have to live with it. But man, I just honestly think Miami was the perfect destination, because I think Miami is going to be the top dogs coming out of the Eastern Conference next year, and I feel like if you put him on that Miami Heat team, I can't see a team in the Eastern Conference that beats them. When you look at the Boston Celtics, they just beat Boston, and they've shown multiple years now that they can compete with those guys, and those guys don't scare them. The Milwaukee Bucks, they knocked them off, and they're in the 1 seed. And then you have Philly that are still dangling around with, whatever is going to happen with James Harden and so on and so forth. So, the Miami Heat, now they got to move in a different direction. Maybe, the Portland Trailblazers pick up the phone call. The phone call's tomorrow for Damian Lillard, but I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. But while we're on the topic of the Phoenix Suns and the Washington Wizards, let's go ahead and talk about CP3. CP3, as we all know, the aging player in this league. I'm not even going to go out there and call him a superstar or star. I think that's a bit extreme. But now he's in a situation where he's on a team that's looking to rebuild, and he's not going to be there for much longer. So it depends on what they want to do with him. So if the Washington Wizards buy out Chris Paul, or they end up trading him, where would be his best destination?
I like his fit with the Boston Celtics. I like, because they kind of require a player like him. I think, like, either with the Boston Celtics, or I really, really, really like him on the Los Angeles Clippers as a backup point guard. I think he can provide value. There's a lot of teams, I think, he's been rumored with the Lakers, he's been rumored with the Warriors, he's been rumored with the Clippers, he's been rumored with the Celtics. I think any 4 of those teams, like a contender team that needs a veteran point guard that can come off the bench and control the second unit and play make at a high level. Because regardless, CP3, he can't create advantages anymore. He's not gonna score at a high level, but what he does have a high IQ, and he still can play make at a pretty solid level, at maybe even at elite level. His assist numbers were still high this past regular season, and that's with him being injured and getting a little bit older. So I do think any one of those contender teams that I mentioned previously, Boston, the Clippers, the Warriors, the Lakers, he can come off the bench and provide solid minutes as a backup point guard.
Yeah, if a buyout happens, I feel like the Lakers he would probably edge towards the Lakers. And but like, the LeBron case, hey, LeBron's my friend. We get, once an opportunity, lifetime to play together. That might be the case. But other teams I can see him going to as well. If he does get traded, or, they release him, look like Miami's a team that he can fit into as well. They need, that veteran type point guard. I feel like Kyle Lowry compared to Chris Paul, it's a little different. Chris Paul knows how to control games. He knows how to, set the offenses up, slow the tempo down. Whether to Lowry, as it's fast paced, he's kind of shambled. He's kind of, jittery, jumpy with the ball. But Celtics, another team, they just, got rid of Marcus Smart. They're going to need another point guard on that team. The only guy right now, Peyton Pritchard, Malcolm Brogdon, Derek White. Those guys are not your usual point guard. So for them, I feel like he'll fit perfect. And the other teams I've mentioned, Clippers, another team that I feel like on the bench, if they keep him and Russell Westbrook together, I feel like they can make a nice backcourt. One guy starts, the other guy comes off the bench, and playoff time comes, it's perfect. If one guy's not rolling, you bring the other veteran point guard in and see how he fits with the team on the offensive side of the ball. And yeah, I don't expect Chris Paul to get traded with that contract that he has on his head. A lot of teams are not going to try to want to pick that up, so I do see a buyout happening. I don't want Chris Paul on my team at all. I'm not a huge fan of the guy. I don't want him to come to the Lakers. It's going to be, hey, I'm with my best friend. I'm relaxed. I'm back in LA. It's not going to be all about basketball, so I don't want him on my team. So just pick him up for me, Abdi.
I'm not too sure if Miami is an ideal situation for Chris Paul, but it does make sense when you compare him to an aging point guard in Kyle Lowry. But at the same time, I think if you put CP3 on the Miami Heat team, it kind of messes everything up a little bit. But I don't know, man. You say you don't want him on the Lakers. Why wouldn't you want him? I mean, you have D'Angelo Russell right now currently, who's on the market as well, and you guys are contemplating whether or not you guys want to bring him back. I'm not saying not pay D'Angelo Russell or not bring him back, but at the same time, if you add him and Chris Paul, it's not that bad of a fit.
They both cones. They both could not play defense. I'm telling you, bro. Like Chris Paul, I know Chris Paul, man. When it comes to them late stretches in the playoffs, he tends to disappear. Tends to turn off the engine. I can't respect that. I need that type of player on my team. We've seen D'Lo do that in the Western Conference Finals, shooting 13% from three, just completely outplayed in the game, completely outplaying himself, putting himself on the bench. I feel like Chris Paul brings that same type of stuff. It's a different type of point guard, but 40 years old, he can't move on defense, and offensively, he's not there anymore.
I'm not. I mean, I kind of get that, but when you have, it's D'Angelo Russell though.
Yeah, D'Lo's ass. He's up there with it. Like I said, either or, both of them, they trash. I don't want either or on my team, but D'Lo's gonna probably come back, and I have to live with that.
Fair enough, but for me, I think I think the best situation, the best two situations for Chris Paul would be one, the Boston Celtics. I think, the Boston Celtics, it's been evident for the last 4 or 5 years that they need a point guard badly. Ever since Kyrie Irving left them, they really haven't had stability at that point guard position. They tried, Terry Rozier, they tried Marcus Smart for a lot of years, and it hasn't been successful whatsoever. I feel like if Chris Paul comes to that team, it could work, to a certain extent. I was under the impression that these guys were going to keep Marcus Smart and then bring Chris Paul along for the ride. That way, in crunch time situation on the offensive end, you can kind of play Chris Paul alongside Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and he can, help facilitate the offense, take the pressure off Jason Tatum in terms of facilitating and running the show. And then defensively, bring in Marcus Smart. So kind of like an offense defense type thing. But, with Marcus Smart being on the move, I'm not too sure if, the ideal spot would be Boston. So I think my number one destination for Chris Paul now would be the Los Angeles Clippers. I'm not too sure if they should bring back Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook did show some flashes in the postseason where he can, help them win some games and stuff like that. He did pretty well for himself, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like, Russell Westbrook's not really that point guard that's going to be able to, take you over the hump or win you some sort of championship, even if Paul George and Kawhi Leonard were both healthy in that series. So I think, you probably have to decide whether or not you want to bring back one or the other. And, I would lean towards Chris Paul, bring him back to LA, bring him back to a place where he's familiar. And if number one, you do got to pray and hope that Kawhi and PG can stay healthy. That's the first things first. But number two, if you're able to bring Chris Paul in any sort of capacity onto this team, whether that's putting him into the starting lineup or bringing him off the bench, it could really help Paul George and Kawhi Leonard a lot. It can help him a lot more. He can help them a lot more than he can help Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown now, after that Marcus Smart trade. And if the Clippers are able to stay healthy and they're able to add Chris Paul into this lineup, it's going to be a lot easier for guys like PG and Kawhi to just strictly focus on getting their buckets. And Chris Paul, although he's not the same guy, he's lost a step offensively and defensively. He's just an old guy now in the league. He can bring a little bit of veteran experience and veteran leadership to any franchise he goes to. And so it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up going. I do think a buyout is on the way for him. I just don't see any team in the league taking on that massive contract that he's got, especially with his, recent injury history and his age. That's just a lot to take on. And so, for the Washington Wizards, you get what you can get. At the end of the day, you moved on from Bradley Beal to get this guy to kind of offload him in the foreseeable future in this upcoming, off season when July 1st hits. And so it's, as I said before, the Wizards, they have some sort of idea where they want to go in terms of, rebuilding this team from the ground up. And Chris Paul, of course, does not fit the picture. When you're thinking about a rebuild, you think about all the young talent you have on the team, and Chris Paul is not a young guy anymore. So, it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up. I think, he can contribute to a lot of these teams in some sort of way. But I just hope these teams don't expect too much out of him, because when you expect too much out of Chris Paul, that's when things go wrong. We've seen that year in, year out. We saw it in Phoenix. We saw it on the Clippers. That's just not who he is. Even back when he was young, you just can't rely too heavily on Chris Paul, because he's either going to get injured, he's either going to, shit the bed in the postseason, and it's going to hurt your team a lot. And so if the expectations are low, you bring on Chris Paul, and you're going to be in for a hell of a ride. So, but, moving aside from Chris Paul and every trade that happened, this past week, we go ahead and move on to the NBA draft. One of the most exciting times of the year. Of course, the last time we talked about the NBA draft, I didn't have some knowledge on it. A majority of these players, I think I had a good idea about three. Of course, Victor Wembanyama, and then Scoot, and Brandon Miller and Grady Dick after that. But every other player beyond that, not too much history with. But of course, today we're going to be talking about the NBA draft and the big board. So we're going to be, of course, going through the first lottery picks 1 through 14, and we're going to do a little bit differently, because I think everybody knows what 1 through 3 is going to be. It really just depends on what order, whether Scoot or Brandon Miller go 2 or 3. But I think every pick beyond that gets extremely tricky. A lot of teams got to make some tough decisions on who they want to pick, for the foreseeable future. And so, we go ahead and start off with the number 4 pick. I think we got the Houston Rockets. I think, Abdi, you were eyeing one of the Thompson twins. Amen Thompson.
Yeah.
So, Amen Thompson, man, I'm a little bit concerned with him. I'm not gonna lie. I think his playmaking could be very good for this Houston Rockets team, but I'm not too sure, in terms of, jump shot wise, what he can bring offensively if teams just keep going under the screens.
Yeah, I mean, like his jump shot, it's like a glaring weakness. Like right away when you see him shoot, it's not even just like he's not able to hit a jump shot. It's just like he's just a brick, like plain and simple. I mean, I will credit that he has worked on trying to improve it, but overall mechanically, it's not there. It's not what it needs to be as his jump shot. I think it's going to be something that's a major focus. But with him, his playmaking is absolutely unbelievable. I think his ability to just make skip passes and jump passes, and his creativity as a passer. I think when I look at him, he's one of the more creative passers I've seen since LaMelo and Tyrese Halliburton. Those two guys, when they're coming out, they're known to be creative passers, and he's up there as a creative passer. And I think that's exactly what this team needs. I mean, you have guys like Jabari Smith who weren't able to get to their spots just because of a lack of a lead guard. Jalen Green has been forced into a position where he needs to take tougher shots, and he needs to force himself in positions that he doesn't need to be and be inefficient just because they don't have a lead guard. And I think Amin comes in, and he's essentially that lead guard for them. He's someone who can play make for others. He can get into the paint. Him and Sengun can possibly develop a 2-man game, and I think he's the future point guard for this team.
If you were to give him a player comparison to, who would it be now?
It's kind of tough giving him a player comparison, but if I did, he's somewhat of a blend between somewhere wherever he lies between a Ja Morant and a Ben Simmons, somewhere in between where they lie. I think athletically he's more athletic than both. But if I had to give him a comparison of his skill set, it's somewhere in between Ja Morant and Ben Simmons. I think as a playmaker, he's just as solid as Ja was coming out. I think Ja edges him a little bit in terms of getting into the pick and roll and whatnot. But Amin Thompson, I think he's phenomenal as a playmaker. But he also lacks that outside jump shot that Ben Simmons has. But he has the defensive tools. I won't say he's elite defensively, but he has a skill set to play defense. He has the potential to play defense just because of the athleticism. I mean, I always say this about him, but he's one of the most athletic prospects I think I've ever seen in my life. I mean, just a sheer speed, quickness, and just explosiveness. It's just ridiculous. So it's like somewhere of a blend between a Ja Morant and a Ben Simmons.
Yeah, that's fair to say. I think
the only question I have with him is the jump shot. You're coming into a jump shot league. It's a fast-paced league. You know, you're gonna have to, especially as a guard. He's what, 6'4", 6'5",
6'7".
6'7",
Yeah.
6'7". You know, 6'7" playing point guard. You're gonna need that jump shot coming into the league. You're gonna need that 3-point shot to stretch the floor, especially as a big guard. And that's the only concern with me. You're throwing out Ben Simmons comparisons, and we've seen the pathway he's went down and how he's
But
playing.
what makes me a little bit a little more positive with the men is one, I think his work ethic kind of edges someone like Ben Simmons from what I've heard and what people say about him. They say this guy has a lot more of a work ethic, and then Ben Simmons, there's concerns about his overall motor and how much he works on his game. And with even at a base level, Ben Simmons, regardless of how we feel about him, he was still a productive NBA player, still all NBA level player. Even if he wasn't that scorer that we wanted him to be, even if he wasn't that assertive player that he wasn't meant to be. But I think Amen Thompson, he's a touch higher athletically while being a better playmaker. I think Ben Simmons has him edged out defensively, but I think regardless, this guy's going to be an instant paint touch. He's going to get to the paint, but you're right. His biggest concern to me is just that jump shot, and he doesn't have that natural scoring ability. I think that's what he lacks. Just his overall scoring skill set is limited to more towards getting into the paint. But as a playmaker and just athletically, I think this guy is unbelievable.
Yeah, his athleticism is crazy.
I think the one thing that puts him over a lot of these guys, and earns him that spot, at number 4. It's the playmaking ability, man. Although he doesn't have, the greatest offensive bag, at the end of the day, the Houston Rockets are in desperate need of a point guard. And when you pair him alongside a guy like Jalen Green, what does that offense look like? Jalen Green, we know how great of a scorer he can be for that Houston Rockets team, but now you have now he can rely on a point guard to kind of put him in the right positions, and alongside a lot of other guys that are on the roster like Jabari Smith and Sengun. So it's like,
I think Jabari's the one that benefits the most. Jabari's the one that really needs a point guard, man. Because Jabari's not like a self-creator. Jabari isn't a guy that's going to get into his bag like that. He's like a heavy catch and shoot kind of guy. He's a one dribble pull-up kind of guy. So just like it was an AU playground last season. That wasn't basketball. They didn't have a point guard. Kevin Porter Jr., I think he's a solid basketball player. He's not a point guard at all.
I mean, if they do go the Amen Thompson route, does that mean Kevin Porter Jr. is going to be on this roster going into next year?
I think he's a 6-man.
Why would he be?
I think he can be really effective though as a 6-man. I think he could be really, really effective. Kevin Porter Jr. as like a catch and shoot player that's able to kind of create his own shot, play make as like a secondary role, tertiary role. I think he can benefit the offense. Maybe come in at times, be at the same lineup because Amen is 6'7". You could have lineups at some point with KPJ, Jalen Green, and Amen. You have a lot of flexibility with that. So, and he is on a pretty good contract. So.
It could be interesting to see if Kevin Porter Jr. is willing to take on, a 6-man role. The thing is, my whole question for Kevin Porter Jr. is, of course, his temper tantrums. When he's not, doing well, or if things aren't going his way, he's gonna let it be known. He's gonna let it be known to the team, let it be known to the media, and so, I think Ime at the end of the day, he's gonna get his hands on, Amen Thompson, and it's gonna be interesting to see because, if he's able to, have this strong work ethic. At the end of the day, it's going to work out well. They're building something. They're a very young team. They've been able to hit on these last couple of draft picks, and I honestly think they'll hit on this next one as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how that whole offense and that whole team looks going into next season. But now we go ahead and move on to number 5. And I think for us, we have on our big board, we got Jarris Walker coming out of Houston with this one. I'm not gonna lie, when I watch this guy's highlights, man, he's number one, he's built like Isaiah Stewart. So
yeah, he is strong.
So he's a strong big man. So you pair him alongside Isaiah Stewart. I just want to know how that's gonna look. But the one thing that does stand out for him is his ability to stretch the floor. So how does his fit work for this Pistons team?
I think their front court or what they're aiming for is for him to be alongside Jalen Durant. It's hilarious because Jalen Durant is unbelievably strong for a 20-year-old. The guy, Paul George, was talking about it. Like, he just basically moves people out the way. So they definitely are going to pair up to be one of the stronger front court pairings. Initially, Cam Whitmore was projected to go here. And then the more that I thought about it with regards to his medicals and also Jarris Walker's fit in that front court, this guy is a high IQ player. You don't need like his ability to just make like passes as a secondary like player. You can just give him the ball and he's gonna make the right choice. He's gonna roll to the basket. I do have issues with his overall finishing. He has a soft touch, which is great, but sometimes I feel like he just needs to assert himself with his frame. I mean, you're literally built like a running back, not even a running back. You're literally built like a D lineman. I need him to be a little bit more assertive with his finishing, and his overall skill set. But I mean, the guy. He's a high IQ player. I think this front court is going to be one of the better defensive front courts in the future. I think these guys fit well, and him playing alongside Cade and Ivy is going to open up the floor for him to shoot his outside jump shot, and he is a pretty good mid-range shooter as well, which is what not a lot of people know. So I think this fit, it's seamless to me.
Yeah, what I got from Walker, man, he's a defensive wrecking ball. The little 2-minute tape I watched of him, that guy was just everywhere on the defensive side of the ball. I kind of like it on the Pistons. Jalen Durant is a physical guy. He's a double machine in the games that he was playing, and to pair him alongside Walker, Walker, you got the little spot up jump shot as well. It can work on that 3 spot, and for them, instead of going Cam Whitmore, instead of going more small forward guard oriented, they're going more big. I feel like these guys have a lot of bigs. They have Stewart, they have Durant, they have Wiseman, they have what's the other guy's name?
Is Bagley still there?
Bagley's still on that team, right?
Yeah, they got a
got
lot
a
of
whole lot
bigs.
I think so.
They got a whole lot of bigs, but to me, Walker stands out with Durant. Him, the energy he brings on the defensive side of the court is crazy. So I feel like for the Pistons, with Cade coming back, them taking Ivy and then pairing these 2 big men together, they're creating something. And Walker can pan out to be that defensive guy and that 10, 11, 12-point guy that can hit that corner 3 for them. It's a good pick.
Oh, man, I honestly completely forgot they have Jalen Durant on this team. So I mean, when you add him to the mix, I mean, they got themselves a front court for the future, man. But honestly, I think the Pistons can go a lot of ways with this number 5 pick, man. They can go Walker. I honestly think the one guy that would fit well with this team, Cam Whitmore, man. That guy. We'll talk about him in a little bit. I think that guy will fit well with this team. But I think, at the end of the day, that the Pistons are trying to build a brick wall. I think it's built once they draft this guy, or if they draft this guy, that brick wall is going to be set. And his ability. Honestly, the one thing that sways in Jarris Walker's favor in comparison to a lot of the other guys is the fact that his ability to stretch the floor as a big. Although he might have some question marks in terms of his aggressiveness and stuff like that, his ability to stretch the floor and be effective is going to be very crucial. And I think Monty Williams, he's building something. He initially didn't want to take this job, but now he has all this young talent on his hands. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out for him. But now we go ahead and move on to the number 6 pick, which is the Orlando Magic. And you have them taking Anthony Black. Anthony Black, guard out of
Arkansas.
6'5". I got my doubts about this guy. I'll let you go though.
Sick. So Anthony Black, he's not my most ideal fit right here for Orlando. I think I like him as a player. He's grown on me just because of his versatility. I mean, 6'7" guard that can guard 1 through 3. He's excellent defensively. Like if I had to give him a comp, he's like a more athletic Josh Giddey with the ability to play defense. I mean, he makes smart plays. He's always reading the floor well in the pick and roll. He's a very solid playmaker. And when he gets to the cup, I mean, a lot of change of directions. He's able to finish strongly. And Arkansas had terrible spacing with Jordan Walsh there. And it just felt like he was still able to get to his spots. And, I'm a fan of him as a player. I think he's going to be a high-level starter. My thing is with Orlando, I feel like right here, it would make sense for them to go with rim protection and take someone like Taylor Hendricks, who can go anywhere from 6 to 12 to 13. I think they're in desperate need of rim protection. I mean, Wendell Carter, I think he's a very solid center, but this team overall lacks rim protection. And I think someone like Taylor Hendricks could help this team. But Anthony Black, even then, I think as like a secondary playmaker and a defender, this team, he suits this team really well.
I'm not gonna lie, when you wrote down Anthony Black to Orlando, and once I found out this guy was a guard, I was like, man, I'm not too sure if this is the right fit because they got a whole lot of guards right now. They got Markelle there, they have Suggs, they have Cole Anthony, and I'm hearing now that they're fielding offers for both Cole Anthony and Jalen Suggs. And so, if they end up taking Anthony Black, I think one of them's got to be on the move. There's just no way you have so much guard depth and you don't have any depth in the front court. But for me, my issues with Anthony Black, man, you hit around the head. He reminds me of a lot like Josh Giddey. The vision is there. I like the vision. His ability to play make is off the charts. He's able to see things that a lot of other point guards aren't able to see. But and of course, in his ability to apply pressure at the rim. But and at the same time, it's like the jump shot's not really there and stuff like that. But that player comparison for him to be Josh Giddey, I was just like, man, I'm not too sure if the Orlando Magic need a guy like that. I'm sure he'll thrive somewhere, if they don't end up taking him. But I think there's a lot of other guys on the board right now that they could have taken. And if you're gonna go, not necessarily guard, if you're gonna go in that type of direction, not necessarily go to a big. I mean, I think Grady Dick would have been very smart for this type of pick, for this spot. I think his ability to be, he could play the 2 or the 3 for that Orlando Magic team, his ability to stretch the floor, that works well with guys like France and whoever they have at point guard, whether it's Markel, Suggs, or Cole Anthony. So,
I think it's just because they think like they can end up landing Grady at their next pick at the 11th spot. I think that's what they're envisioning. If not, like, I just know, like, ideally Orlando wants to take a shooter with one of these 2 picks. Like, it's a guarantee that they want to take a shooter, because shooting was one of their biggest issues last season. I think that's their ideal pick. They have to go with a shooter either at 6 or 11. Personally, it wouldn't have been Anthony Black. That's my favorite pick at 6. It's a guy that's afterwards that we have on our board. I think Asar Thompson would have been my more favorite pick, even if he's not as high, as solid as a shooter as the other picks there. I just think his skill set, I favor it more than Anthony Black, and I like his overall athletic ability.
I don't know.
Anthony Black is a solid basketball player. Anthony Black, he's going to be a starter.
I feel like Anthony Black on the playmaking side, he's phenomenal. The jump shot shooting, if he made a couple more threes, his numbers would have been up at 35% shooting from the 3-point line. If it was like, if he made 3 or 4 more threes, he would have been sitting at 36% shooting at the 3-point line. And I feel like he's one of the best defenders coming into this draft, sitting at 6'7". He's a tall, jumbo playmaking guard. And the upside for that can be dangerous. It can be dangerous for me. So adding to the Orlando, they got a whole lot of guards on the team. They got Suggs. They got the other guy that
Markel.
came.
They have Markel and Cole Anthony.
Markel. Markel's coming back healthy, and then those guys are just they got a lot of tall guards on that team. And to just add this guy to the team and the roster, I don't know. It might be tough, but at the same time, I feel like the playmaking ability that he has and his defensive upside can help this Orlando Magic team.
It's just really confusing to me. I'm not too sure what type of direction Orlando's trying to go in. I mean, obviously they have Paulo there, so you want to be able to.
They got 2 picks to work with right there.
The thing
they got 6 and 9?
6 and 11.
6 and 11. I mean, can't go wrong.
Like, if they went with Grady Dick at number 6, I wouldn't be too mad. I just feel like Grady Dick is like somewhere between the 8 to 11 range, somewhere around there. I think they could potentially land him. Like, because I feel like I don't see like the Wizards or the Jazz or any of those teams taking Grady Dick. The only thing is, if he ends up going 12, a team like OKC is 100% taking him. But I just think that Grady Dick, you can get him back at 11. I just think those teams from like 7 onwards, maybe the Pacers. I don't know. The Pacers, I don't know if they want to go with Grady Dick, if they want to go with Asar, but I just think any of those teams from the Jazz and the Wizards aren't necessarily aiming to get Grady Dick. So,
speaking of the Indiana Pacers, we'll go there next. They have the next pick in the draft, number 7. On your big board, Abdi, you have them taking Asar Thompson, the other twin. Explain your reasoning for that one.
I think he comes in because, as you guys are aware, I think they've been targeting a wing defender. They've been targeting a wing this entire time, whether that's been OG Anunoby or potentially fielding offers for other players. But I think Asar Thompson comes in 6'7", dummy athletic. He's not at the same level as Amin, because if Amin's a 1% athlete, I think 1 percentile athlete, I think this guy's probably top 10% athlete in the NBA. But Asar, in his own right, like I mentioned before, he is an incredible athlete defensively. I mean, he has a higher upside than his brother just because of his instincts, his tools. He has a tighter handle than his brother. In transition, he does a great job of getting out and finishing. In the half court, he has more scoring counters than his brother. I think this guy he's one of the best cutters in the draft alongside Cam Whitmore. He does an excellent job of just finding his spots and cutting backdoor. I think him and Halliburton can form a connection together. I just like his overall skill set. If I had to give him a player comp, I think he, or if, at least like a projection of who he can be if he pans out. I think of someone like young Iguodala. I think that's like his player comparison. Maybe a little bit more athletic. But he's no slouch as a playmaker himself. His brother is an elite playmaker, but he himself, he's no slouch whatsoever. He has a high IQ and he's very good as a secondary playmaker. So I kind of like him here in Indiana.
I think Indiana can go a lot of ways, though. It's not
Indiana
bad
got a
taking a
lot of
Tom.
options. Yeah.
They got options. I think taking a Thompson, it's not bad. It's not the worst thing in the world. But I think right now in the draft room for the Indiana Pacers, I'm trying to think what they're thinking. I think they're thinking they're trying to go big, and if they do miss out on Walker, the next best available big would be Taylor Hendricks. I think that fit would be a lot better than Thompson. But I think at the end of the day, though, because the Indiana Pacers, their team is like they already have a point guard. They already have Tyrese Halliburton, who's gonna get these guys in position, and so it's just like at the end of the day, do they really need like another guard or anything like that? I don't
The
think
thing is, he's
bad
gonna be
pick.
more of he's a wing. The first brother is like a guard, like a strict guard. This Asar is like a wing. He's a wing, but the thing is, he has he's a very solid enough player that he can be a secondary playmaker. In an offense, he has a high IQ. He's able to play make to others. So I think he can come in, step in as like a secondary playmaker. But you're right, someone like Taylor Hendricks could fit seamlessly alongside someone like Miles Turner. I think defensively they can form a tandem, and he is a shooter from outside. But they have a lot of options here. They can go Asar Thompson, they can go Grady Dick. If he's somehow there, I think they could potentially go Cam Whitmore, if they like his upside. But they have a lot of options to go here, so we'll just have to see.
They could trade that 7 pick too. Who knows?
Yeah, if they are targeting a player, but
I'm not too
I
sure if
mean,
the Indiana
I don't know.
Pacers are gonna make any
Seven
moves.
seven for OG Anunoby is a tough sell.
That's a hefty price, man.
A
Yeah,
tough sell.
I can't believe the Toronto Raptors are trying to attack so much for him. But aside from the Indiana Pacers, we move on to the Washington Wizards. A team we've talked about a lot in this episode. But in your big board, Abdi, you have him taking guard Kobe Buffkin. I think you're very high on this guy. If I had to, make an opinion or
Extremely high. I think they can go with two guys here. They can either go with Kobe Buffkin or they can go with Cam Whitmore. I personally have Kobe Buffkin here just because he's a late riser. Initially, on the year, the guy that everybody was looking for at Michigan was Jet Howard, who's projected around 22, 23 now. But when he got injured, Kobe Buffkin was thrusted into a role where he had the ball a lot more, and he became an on-ball creator. And this guy, to me, very, very few holes in his game. I mean, he's one of the best finishers amongst guards in this class. He's very crafty. He's very fluid. He almost plays with like a Jalen Brunson type of pace, and it takes his time getting to his spots. He has a very smooth and methodical jump shot. I think overall, as just like a player, he's very, very solid. He's going to be like a high level player, and he has upside. I think people are sleeping on his star potential. A couple months ago, he was around 20. Then he went up to like 15. And then people said late lottery. And then now, reports are saying as high as 8, 9. I think this guy has potential to be a star as long as he gets more on-ball reps. And then I think he needs to add more strength to his overall frame.
Yeah, whoever the Wizards draft, I feel sorry for him. You gotta have some type of LeBron gene, some type of Jordan gene in you to save that franchise. Good luck. It can be Kobe, it can be Jay, it can be whoever it is on that team. Good luck. I feel sorry for you.
Man, Kobe Buffkin, man. I think when I spent some time earlier today watching this film, man, I can't lie. This guy has a very good feel for the game. I think even if he goes to the Washington Wizards or a different team, I think this guy's going to be able to thrive from day one. He's one of the more polished guys that I feel like that are coming out of this draft class. And I think this draft class has the potential to be one of the best draft classes, in recent history because they got a lot of top talent. He's one of the few people that I think that have extremely high potential. This guy, high motor, very good defensively, good finishing around the rim. His ability to make tough shots and shoot the ball, it's very well. So I think this is a perfect fit for the Washington Wizards just because I feel like, if he gets run, he can play freely. They're not the Washington Wizards, of course, as we said earlier, these guys are going to be contending for the lottery pick each and every year. So he can just play freely. There's not a lot of pressure on him. And, he could be one of the people, one of the cornerstone pieces, for this Washington Wizards franchise. And so, I can't really see the Washington Wizards going in a different direction. Maybe they go Cam Whitmore here, but I think Kobe Buffkin is a solid pick. I think it's a perfect fit out of all the picks we've talked about outside of the top three. But aside from that, we go ahead and move on to the Utah Jazz. And this is where you have Cam Whitmore going on your big board.
Cam Whitmore, to me, like genuinely speaking, I think you can make a case that he should be selected at 5, maybe even 4. I mean, this guy, like, just overall talent wise, I think he's very, very special. Just his ability to just explode, get to the rim, his quickness. He's like a 6'5", 6'6" wing. I mean, he reminds me of like a more perimeter oriented Miles Bridges. Miles Bridges that can put the ball on the floor a lot more. He has a kind of a slick handle. He's able to hit a lot of pullbacks and step backs. His shooting his overall self creation upside is going to take some work, but he has shown flashes. I mean, he's one of the youngest players in the draft. When I watch this guy, I feel like I'm watching almost like an Anthony Edwards type of clone. He doesn't have that sheer power that Anthony Edwards has, or the overall like height. But like when I talk about quickness and just explosiveness, I mean, this guy's ridiculous. And I think him going here isn't a bad fit at all. I think the Utah Jazz will do a great job in terms of development. One of the biggest focuses for this guy is his overall just feel for the game and his playmaking. At times when you're watching him, it felt like there's plays where guys were open and he was trying to still go up, trying to score. His feel isn't there as a player yet, but he is young, so I think that is something that will come alongside. But I'm a fan of this guy. I think he's a top 5 talent in this draft.
Out of the 14 players, highlights that I watched today, Cam Whitmore was one of the ones that I enjoyed the most. This guy immediately from the jump, from the first highlight, you said that he was similar to Anthony Edwards, and I saw it in the first play. I think he hit a move very similar to Anthony Edwards, and it was like a step back 3, and I was like, okay. Although, I did watch 14 minutes of his highlight tape, not a single assist. It's very selfish of him. But at the end of the day, I think this is a guy that a lot of teams should target. I'm not too sure if any of these franchises are smart. They do take a gamble on him.
I think the Orlando Magic should take a gamble at him. I think the Indiana Pacers should take a gamble at him. I think all these teams from 1 after 3 should take a gamble at someone like Cam Whitmore. I think just his skill set, like that physicality and that finishing and ball handling that he has, I think his skill set is very, very strong. He just needs development in terms of just his overall feel and playmaking.
I mean, I just like, the way he plays, it's like he's always looking to score. Once the ball's in his hands,
I think that's why Detroit, I would have been a fan with him at Detroit, because he wouldn't have the responsibilities of having to create when he has Cade and Jaden Ivey. Those two are enough as ball handlers and creators. He can just look to do the thing that he's good at, which is scoring, attacking closeouts, finishing. I think that would have been a nice spot for him to land at.
It's like, he has this drive, he has a strong motor, and you can't teach that. You can't teach that. It's either you got it or you don't. And his ability to score the basketball, is arguably, it could be a lot. You can compare him to a lot of guys in this draft, man. And after watching his tape today, man, I was like, man, this guy's going to be a great scorer. If Indiana are able to get their hands on this guy, imagine an offense of him, Benedict Mathurin, and then Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton is going to be touching 10 assists a game because he gets either one of those two guys the ball. Those guys are looking to score. They're not looking to do anything else with the ball. And so, Cam Whitmore going here for the Utah Jazz, I think it's going to be a very solid pick, man, because they're getting a guy with a high motor, a guy that can score the basketball. Of course, you can try to teach him how to pass the ball a lot more to his teammates, because it's 5-on-5 basketball. It's not 1-on-1. But any team that lacks scoring, I think Cam Whitmore is the guy to go to for sure. So it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up. But him going to Utah and on your big board is not that bad pick after all. So, but let's go ahead and move on to number 10. Another guy that I like on your big board, and you have Taylor Hendricks coming out of UCF.
I like this guy a lot. I think a couple months ago, he was projected like similar to like Kobe Buffkin. He was like 18, 19, and then rose up towards the end of the season. He peaked as high as number 5. I like this guy a lot just because of his overall build as a player. I mean, he is a sharpshooter. He's an overall solid jump shooter. He has solid mechanics. Defensively, he's very switchable, and he brings this level of rim protection. if I had to compare him to a player, or at least give him like at least a floor, I want you to think of like um a peak Robert Covington with more athleticism. You know how Robert Covington was able to be a kind of a 3-and-D wing, but also had the ability to block shots. I mean, at some points Robert Covington was playing center. And this is what kind of what Taylor Hendricks brings as a player. I think his versatility defensively as a shot blocker and switching in front of guards. One of the biggest question marks for him is really just his handle. I think that's somewhere that really needs work for him in his overall strength and frame. And that's one of the bigger reasons why there's a discussion going on draft Twitter whether he should be ahead of Jarris Walker. They're the two guys that have been compared to each other, but Jarris Walker has a kind of a stronger frame, like his IQ a little bit more in his passing. But Taylor Hendricks, I think his ability to shoot edges out Jarris Walker. So that's a little fun debate, but I think Taylor Hendricks comes in here and he contributes to a Mavs team that really needs front court help. So.
Yeah, I think when you compared him to Jarris Walker, the one thing that Walker was good at was attacking closeouts, and I think that's where Taylor Hendricks kind of lacks at. But I think for the Dallas Mavericks, if they end up landing this guy, the reason why I think it's just like such a perfect fit is because his ability to stretch the floor, we all know that. But at the end of the day, he can defend on the other end. His shot blocking, his ability to guard 1 through 5, that's something that the Dallas Mavericks need heavily. And I feel like if they end up taking this guy, he's going to be a guy that's going to get heavy minutes from day one, because the Dallas Mavericks have no big. They literally have nobody. They've been running the same big men for the last like 2-3 years. Dwight Powell and Maxi Kleber, like that's just not going to work, and those guys don't play defense, but Maxi Kleber is able to stretch the floor a little bit. Dwight Powell, a little inside presence. I think you get a little bit of both with Taylor Hendricks along with the defense. So I think in a Luka Doncic led offense, and even if Kyrie still stays, Taylor Hendricks can do a lot of things for this team. He can stretch the floor for them. He can play defense. If you need him to run some pick and roll action, you can kind of put him in some sort of sets. But, I think when I think of him, I feel like he's going to have some sort of like similar role to kind of like Porzingis did when he was in Dallas. But, the defensive side, is going to be a lot more than what Porzingis was offering for this Dallas Mavericks team. But this guy was for sure one of the few people as well that I liked watching their highlight tape of, because his ability to play defense and guard 1 through 5, that's not a lot of people have that in the draft, so I think that's going to be perfect fit for him if he ends up going to Dallas. But now we go ahead and move on to number 11. We're here at the Orlando Magic do spin the block and take Grady Dick, a guy who I have stocks in. I'm letting it be known right now. I'm heavily invested.
Yeah, this is a no-brainer pick to me. At least I think this is exactly what the Orlando Magic need. They really missed volume 3-point shooting outside of Gary Harris. They didn't really have anybody that's shooting volume threes. I mean, Paolo struggled from 3. Mark Hill's not a volume 3-point shooter. Suggs kind of improved, but it wasn't a volume. Same thing with France, not a volume 3-point shooter. They really needed somebody to just consistently shoot the ball at a high clip, and Grady Dick, that's exactly what he is for. You can make a case he's the best shooter in the class. I mean, just as a spot up jump shooter, he gets to his spots quickly. He knows how to relocate, and one thing that I like is he's not one dimensional as a sharpshooter. I think that's one of the biggest things about NBA players that get to play in the playoffs. Like Mike Malone said, specialists don't play in the playoffs, and I think Grady Dick is a little bit more than a specialist. I think he's a little bit more athletic than he's credited for. Not saying he's a world beater or anything, but I think he's a little bit more athletic than people credit him for. He crashes the glass well. Defensively, he does have issues, but I think as a team defender, he can be solid enough. I think he competes defensively, and calling him a straight up bad defender would be kind of inaccurate. I think he competes defensively. I think he has a strong motor, an overall high passing feel. I just like him in this fit with Orlando, being able to play off of Paolo in front. So this to me is a perfect pick for the Orlando Magic.
Grady Dick, man. I mean, I honestly, watching him, I understand that he has a great jump shot. That's evident. Everybody knows that. But, after watching this highlight tape today, the one thing that stood out the most to me that is something that flies under the radar is his off-ball movement, his ability to move off the ball and kind of use his jump shot ability to kind of sway defenders to the 3-point line and have him cut back door. I think that's going to be a huge trait, a huge thing that he can carry over to this Orlando Magic team.
It's good that you actually bring that up too, because there was this game, I want to say it was against Oklahoma, where in the second half they were basically face guarding Grady Dick, and he was moving a lot, and he didn't score that much in the second half, but what really changed the game for them is the fact that he's being forced to be guarded, being face guarded. That's what changed a lot for that game, and his ability to move off the ball. I think guys like that are very valuable because they bring a lot of off ball gravity. Someone that's able to constantly move and relocate causes problems and messes up a defense. So that ability for him to do that, I think it's invaluable.
It's like, he's not a stationary shooter. We have a lot of those in the league. I think when I think of like stationary shooter, I think guys like Kyle Korver, I think he's far from that. And you did mention it. You talked about a little bit his athleticism. I think that's extremely underrated. I'm not saying this guy's like a crazy high flyer or anything like that, but I do think he has the ability to get up with the best of them. He might get the best of you sometimes and he might be able to block a shot, but he's going to be able to get up there. And that all starts with him, being so great at creating, being an off ball guy, and allowing his shooting to do all this, all the stuff on the defensive side for the defenders to, go out there and hedge on screens and stuff like that. So I think, man, if the Orlando Magic take Anthony Black with that, with their first pick, and they kind of spin the block and take Grady Dick here, I'm not going to be mad at their draft. I think, you pair Anthony Black with Grady Dick, that's elite playmaking with elite shooting. So you can't necessarily go wrong with that. And of course you add Paulo into the mix and then Franz Wagner. So I think they'll be building something here. But outside of Orlando, I think the one team that I really want this guy to go to is the Indiana Pacers, man. Because I'm thinking, what can Tyrese Halliburton do with this guy on the floor? A guy that can stretch the floor, shoot the ball at a high clip, and have all this off ball movement and stuff like that. Tyrese Halliburton is going to be able to find him in the right spots, and Grady Dick's going to be able to thrive in that situation alongside another scorer in Benedict Mathurin as well. But for
And he does a
Orlando
good job
Magic,
at like getting out in transition. That's the one thing I like about Grady Dick. He's always finding himself a spot at the 3-point line. And Tyrese Halliburton, someone that pushes the pace. I mean, when Indiana was playing, I think they were when he was playing, they were like top 5 in pace. And so someone like Grady Dick, who's constantly getting out, running to the 3-point line, spacing out the floor, I think he'd fit well in Indiana.
yeah, man, he's just the one thing that I hope he has, for any franchise that he goes to, is a point guard that does push the pace, a point guard that sets the tone and can find the guys that are a point guard is an elite playmaker pretty much. And so, if you get Anthony Black and pair him up with Grady Dick, it's not going to be the end of the world for the Orlando Magic. I think it's a solid 1-2 punch there. But now we go ahead and move on to number 12, Bilal Coulibaly. I don't know, man. A lot of raw talent there.
This one, I'm a fan of Bilal, but at the same time, I do think, sometimes scouts become enamored with like physical tools and athleticism. And I think he did rise like pretty high, like really fast. Like, for at one point he was projected like late in the first round, and then he went up to like 20, and then now he got pushed all the way to lottery, because his contributions in those playoff games for the mid 92s. And so, when I look at Bilal, I think, he has an overall like solid base to work with. I mean, defensively, he has potential to be a very, very solid point of attack defender. He's already amazing at like rotating as a help defender. He does need some work at point of attack, guarding on ball, but he's solid in that category. As a ball handler, I think he has shown potential to be like a secondary or maybe a third hand ball handler, running pick and rolls, and like he cuts really well. The thing is, though, for me, I feel like his handle's still a bit raw. Just overall skill set offensively, he doesn't look all too comfortable yet as a player. I think his jump shot isn't where it's necessarily supposed to be. I think it's kind of a slow jump shot. Right now, it's a set shot. And a lot of those games for the Met 92s, they're giving Bilal the jump shot. They're giving him the space to shoot. They're essentially daring him to shoot. And so his jump shot isn't like completely broke, but it is something that I will be reliable to me heading into the NBA. And so, personally here, my pick would have been Cason Wallace. Maybe I can talk about him in a bit, but he's someone that, might still end up going top 10, but there is concerns about his back, and there is concerns that, he doesn't have as high as upside, and might slip all the way to Atlanta at 15. But, for OKC, I don't think Bilal would have been my most ideal pick, but I would understand it.
I think for me, I'm gonna keep it real short when it comes to Bilal Coulibaly. I just know this guy's gonna be a very raw prospect coming into this OKC team. If he gets picked here at number 12, I think, it's gonna be a lot of development that goes into him. Trying to get him up to speed with the NBA game, and he's gonna have to put on some more muscle, and he's gonna have to work on that jumper. So, it's pretty much a project, pretty much work in progress. If they take this guy, they're not necessarily expecting a lot out of him,
And see,
coming into day
that's
one.
where my problem would be. Like my problem would be if they're picking this guy to be a project pick. Um, that bothers me because OKC is kind of in the need now of somebody that's more of a contributor, of being a contributor now. I mean, last year they picked Ousmane Dieng from France, out of the NBL, I believe, and he's a project pick, and he's like a 6'10", kind of like a point forward player, and he's someone that they're still developing. And at this point, I think they somebody that's a contributor now, and like that would be someone like Cason Wallace, who to me is the best perimeter defender in the draft, and all around solid point guard, who brings like a necessary skill to this team that he can contribute right away. As I think Bilal's too much of a project pick for me. I do think he is a little bit farther in his development than previous project picks, but even then, I'm not a fan of this pick in totality.
Yeah, I think it would be smart for the Oklahoma City Thunder to go with a more polished player instead of going into the project direction. I think because I think when I think of the Thunder, I think they're beyond drafting guys that are just projects. I think they understand they have a foundation set, and so you want to be able to build on that foundation. I think if you take a guy that's going to that's going to sit on your bench for 1 to 2 years, and pretty much you're gonna have to develop him, I think it's kind of taking a step back. So there's a lot of other options that they could take, but if they do take him, they just have to go in with the mindset of, it's going to be a project, it's going to be a development, it's going to be a work in progress, and they're just going to have to live with it. But at number 13, after the Oklahoma City Thunder pick at 12, you have the Raptors selecting Keontae George.
This guy really grew on me. Usually I kind of have an agenda against these like score only type of players, but like Keontae is just like a bucket getter from everything I've seen. Initially to begin the year, he was, I think, projected top 7. Then kind of slipped as he picked up an injury, and then his play style became a little bit more inefficient. But when we talk about like shot makers and pull up jump shooters, this guy is up there with the best of them. His ability to just hit a combination of fancy dribbles and different moves, and he does struggle to create separation a bit, but this guy, when we talk about just overall scoring skill set on all 3 levels, he's about as good of a bucket getter. He's a guy that you can give, and he's beaming with confidence. He's ready to pull the step backs, the pull up threes, the driving ability. One question mark is his finishing. He did struggle in that category, but I do like the fact that he's always seeking physicality. He's kind of a strong, little stocky kind of guard. Overall, I think this guy should be mentioned amongst the best in terms of his shooting ability, just because he was shooting at a high volume and was shooting tough shots. But I do like his skill set. I think the Raptors kind of struggle in the half court scoring sets, and someone like Keontae can come in and contribute in the half court sets. I think that's where they're desperately needing is somebody to just be a bucket getter for these guys in half courts, because Toronto's half courts offense has always been an issue for them, and someone like Keontae can come in both as an off-ball player if they decide to keep Pascal Siakam. If not, he can end up being a number 1 scorer, and I think he does have that upside to be a number 1 scorer. He, in terms of talent, I think this guy may be top 7, top 8 in this draft with his ability. The question marks, again, like I mentioned, his decision making. He has some high volumes of turnovers. I think his assist to turnover ratio isn't that good, and defensively, he was playing in a system with 3 guards, so he would be guarding the small forward. And a problem with that is that you would be guarding they would be guarding the slower guy. If you're guarding the 3, you're generally in college, you're guarding someone that's slower. And so, with Keontae, with his lack of like, I don't want to say athletic ability, but his athletic ability isn't up there with the best of them. I think that could be problematic, but I just love this guy's confidence, man.
I think this is a good pick for the Raptors. They are going to be in desperate need of a guard. Fred VanVleet did not opt into his contract, so he's a free agent now, and so they need to move into a direction where they got to fill out the roster, and they don't have a point guard now. So I think Keontae George, he comes in, he's going to be solid for this team, and with the way the Toronto Raptors are going now, eventually this team's going to blow it all up, and they might get the value that they get in return for these 2 guys, OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam, but we're just gonna have to wait and see on that. But I think if they draft this guy Keontae George, it's a start. It's a good step in the right direction. You have him, you got Scotty Barnes there, so you got a foundation, I guess. So you can build off that, and then once you move off from 2 guys that are keeping you in contention, Pascal and OG, you'll be able to have higher picks, so you'll be able to build even more off that. So I honestly think this is a very solid pick. It's one of a few picks as well that do make sense. But I got to move on to our last pick of the night, man. I got to move on to the New Orleans Pelicans, man. You know, you got him taking Derek Lively, 7'1" center out of Duke. I just don't like this guy at all. The worst player
Nah,
in the draft in the first
nah.
14.
I like this fit for them because they have Jonas Valanciunas, and this team for years has struggled with rim protection. Their inability to stop easy shots at the rim, and this guy comes in with a game changing 7'7" wingspan. I mean, just absolutely ridiculous, like physical tools. His instincts are off the charts as a shot blocker. He's great in drop coverage. I think this guy can contribute to this team defensively. They're desperately in need someone to guard the rim. He's going to come in as a rebounder and a shot blocker. And, he does have some solid passing ability out the post as a big man. Offensively, yes, he is a work in progress. He doesn't have any go-to moves offensively. He's not a good screen setter. There is some problems with him offensively, but defensively, you know exactly what you're getting with this guy. And this team they don't need more offensive pieces, especially if they end up keeping Zion and Brandon Ingram. If they end up deciding to move on from those two, then we can talk about a different pick. But I think if they end up keeping those two guys who are already offensive stars, you might as well go ahead and reinforce your defense with someone like Derek Lively, who can come in either as a backup to Jonas Valanciunas or eventually as a starter with his defensive ability. And I kind of see him as if he ends up panning out, I think his floor, or is his at least his ceiling, his player comp can end up being someone like Clint Capella during those Houston years, where he was able to use his length as a lob finisher, as a shot blocker, as a screen setter to open up plays for guys. So I think this guy's a very, very solid basketball player.
It's not a man. I don't know, man. It's
I'm
not a
not gonna
bad
lie.
ceiling.
I thought you were gonna have him at 12 to OKC. I thought you were gonna pair him and Chet together.
Nah, just because Chet is already gonna play the five, that's like a guarantee for the OKC.
100% they're gonna play him at 5. I feel
Yeah.
like Chet got to be the stretch forward there, but I mean, I
I
don't
think
know.
Chet's skill set is just too much of like a five at this point, especially in college. He was a five. Drew Timmy was a number 4. He's always been playing the five since high school. So at this point, OKC was just like, this guy should might as well just be our 5. Let him compete. Add to his strength to his frame. But I thought about the fit would be fun defensively, but I just think the Pelicans need a defender in Derek Lively. I think that's the best fit for them. It's a backup center who can come in. Like, he'll be better than whatever Jackson Hayes was supposed to offer.
That's my thing, though. Like when I watch his game and I think about this New Orleans Pelicans team, I'm like, I understand that this guy doesn't have any offensive bag, and he's great defensively. But in their recent history, they drafted a guy like that. They drafted Jackson Hayes, a guy who can protect the rim and stuff like that, and it didn't pan out well for them. He's their backup big, and they were hoping for him to be their starting big, but now they added Valanciunas, and he just hasn't been better than him. And so I understand the pick. I really do. I understand they need a rim protector. They desperately need one. And although Derek Lively is here at this pick, I feel like I'm not too sure if they can grab anybody else. But this guy just, outside of Clint Capella being his ceiling, when I watched his tape today, like, he reminded me so much of Jared Allen that it made my eyes like bleed. I just wanted to turn off the tape. I couldn't watch it anymore because it's like he does the same thing Jared Allen does. And I'm not saying he's gonna end up being Jared Allen or anything, because they both don't have any offense, but they could bring a lot on the defensive side. But I'm not too sure, man. But I do understand the whole idea around it. They need a rim protector, and he's the best one there. So you got to go ahead and grab that 7'1" center. But if it doesn't pan out, I'm not going to be too surprised, because out of the 14 guys that we have on our big board here, I honestly think this guy's probably the worst one. Out of all the tapes that I've watched, he's got to be definitely the worst one, because when you lack an offensive bag, it's kind of tough to keep to continue be consistent in the NBA and be there long term. And I understand they have all the playmakers and all the scorers in the world. They got CJ there, they got Brandon Ingram and Zion, and so there's not much added scoring you need there. But if you're going to be out there on the floor with all those guys, you got to be able to provide something. And he's just pretty much a lob threat. So, I think, his ceiling being Clint Capella I think it's perfect. Like, it's a good comparison. But, after watching him today, I was like, man, am I watching Jared Allen in college again? What is going on? But it's going to be interesting to see what they do. It's going to be interesting to see what everybody else does in this draft. But before we move off from the draft and close out this episode, are there a few players that can potentially be on your big board top 14 that are right now on the outside looking in?
Case and Wallace, definitely. Point guard out of Kentucky. I think he's one of my favorite players in the draft. In the fact that apparently he might be slipping out of the top 14. Really bothers me. To me, he's like a top 3 guard amongst the lottery picks. I think one guy that could sneak into the lottery from what I've been hearing is Jalen Hood-Schifino from Indiana. And, I've been kind of indifferent on him as a player. He's been projected at 18 to Miami. And then, but recently I've heard that he can go as high as the lottery. And then outside of that, I think there's like players that are slipping, someone like Bryce Sensabaugh at Ohio State. He's been slipping heavily. Dariq Whitehead, apparently he could slip into the second round. G.G. Jackson, same thing, into the second round. So there's a lot of players that potentially could fall into the second round. But for overall, I think Kaysen Wallace, Bilal Coulibaly could end up going out of the lottery. So he's been floated somewhere between 11, from 5 all the way to 15. And so Kaysen Wallace is really the one, to me, that could be the one that falls back into the lottery, and deservedly so. He should be in the lottery. He's one of my favorite players in this draft. So,
hey man, NBA draft tomorrow. A lot of teams are gonna be out trying to make some moves. A lot of guys are gonna be in different spots, and of course, it's gonna be interesting to see where all these players end up in. But like I said, I think this draft has the potential to be one of the best drafts in recent history. Man, there's a lot of talent coming out of this draft. A lot of guys that probably aren't going to be day one ready, but majority of them will be. But it's going to be interesting to see, man. But if you do want a more in-depth analysis on each and every lottery pick that we talked about tonight, Abdi did record a video earlier today about 1 through 14. That we're going off his big board. That's our draft expert, so I trust you. And so if you guys want to go ahead and listen to that, that'll also be in with all the other videos that we'll drop tomorrow for the episode. But with that being said, any final words before we close out today's episode?
the Lakers are going to get a steal in this draft, and it's going to piss me off. I just know they're going to get a steal in this draft. I guarantee they're going to get a steal in this draft. Watch out for the name Brandon Podziemski from Santa Clara. If they land him or they land Bryce Sensabaugh, I'm going to be pissed. That's all you need from me.
Yeah, 17th pick. We're trading that to the Indiana Pacers, and we're getting Buddy Hield and Miles Turner.
Just like last year, right? Just like last year.
Like last year. We throw it on the wall. Hopefully it sticks, It's going to happen.
Yeah, these trade rumors, man. It's repetitive, man. We've been here for a while now. But man, I'm just excited for this NBA draft, man. I'm interested to see what these teams do. I'm interested to see what teams make moves, to move up in the draft or move back in the draft. Like the Lakers, if they want to trade for Buddy Hield and Miles Turner, what are the Pacers going to get and stuff like that. So, of course.
Also, make sure you guys mute Woj. That guy's annoying, man. Actually, I think he said. It's crazy. I think Woj. I think Woj said he's done spoiling draft picks. I think he finally said he's done.
I think the guy we got to worry about is Shams.
Shams,
man.
yeah.
That guy was ruining the NFL draft, and he's not even like an NFL draft.
He's not even an NFL guy.
That's not what he is.
Nah, man. So I'm gonna make sure I meet both of them just in case if Woj gets the itch to tweet about who's the number 1 pick and stuff like that. But I'm excited, man. Looking forward to it. But with that being said, we'll go ahead and close out this episode here. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I really appreciate your love and support. We'd greatly appreciate it if you like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at New Media Podcast. And for those of you that are watching us on YouTube, all of our social media handles will be at the end of this video. And if you're listening to us on Apple and Spotify, if you go to our Instagram page at New Media Podcast, you'll be able to navigate yourself to all of our social media handles there. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And of course, we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Record a new hit, then we making us a film. Wouldn't sign a deal if I got a couple mil. Been in the lab, now they throwing out deals. Me and now Lake, now that's overkill.